this shows us that we have more work to do, that our work in language advocacy just never stops. And I think we need to find new ways of how we can articulate, especially to administrators who may not readily see the value and the impact of what learning about a new language, learning about a different culture, what that really does for the learner.
You're listening to Speaking of Language, a podcast recorded at the Language Resource Center at Cornell University. Each week, we explore a topic related to language pedagogy and second language acquisition. This week on Speaking of Language,
Sam and Angelika revisit what they did last summer. But mostly, they look ahead to trends and current events in language learning and some of the topics in store for the coming season of the podcast.
Sam, we're back!
Season 12 of Speaking of Language.
Hooray!
This is also the 5th episode in our last summer series, if you're keeping track at home. We already weren't sure last fall how far we could stretch this, but if there's one thing I know how to do, it is beat a joke into the ground, so here we are.
I like it. And what we want to do in our season opener here is recap some of the things that happened in the world of languages this summer, and also looking ahead at what we are up to this fall.
All right. So do you have some good, fun summer stories from this summer?
I sure do.
Okay.
So many that are probably not really relevant for our podcast, but
Fair
something
enough.
that is relevant and from the world of world languages. We had a wonderful IELTS conference this summer in New Orleans. It was hot and sticky. But IELTS is the International Association for Language Learning Technology, and that was actually my presidential year. Woohoo!
All right.
I'm glad to be officially past president of that association now. But it was a wonderful gathering of colleagues who are interested in the intersection of languages and all things technology. We had lots of people there giving many fascinating presentations. And of course, one thing that came up regularly was artificial intelligence and ChatGPT.
Yes, which was a recurring topic on our podcast last academic year.
Exactly, yeah. And I think this will be something that will continue to be on the forefront of everybody's mind, not only language educators, but
Of course.
one thing that we talked about a lot, and these are conversations that are going on campus here in general as well, is it good? Is it bad? What are we doing with this? How are we dealing with it? And I think the language community, and we've kind of hinted at that in our last season as well, I think we are going to see this as an affordance.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is here to stay. I think this is only becoming more and more evolved.
Yeah.
Students certainly are using ChatGPT, and I think we need to learn how to live with it, just like we did when Wikipedia came about,
Yep.
when Google Translate came about.
Of course.
I mean, think about math and the calculator. And I think if we figure out ways how ChatGPT can make our lives easier in terms of lesson planning, in terms of our students having more opportunities to practice the target language, if they're maybe a little bit on the shyer end, they can have conversations with a chatbot. So I do think there are lots of good things that can come out of it, and we just have to be mindful of how we assign tasks and assessments in our language classrooms.
Yes.
To make sure that students simply cannot just use artificial intelligence to do their work for them.
Yes. Well, and I'm not an educator myself, so I am careful not to make sweeping statements about how people's pedagogy should function.
Yeah.
But we've talked a lot about this here on the podcast, and I've read up on this in my own outside life, and I think it's easy for us, no matter what you do, to get into this mode of thinking where the focus is on how do I keep this technology, this new tool from interfering with how I evaluate
Yeah.
students? How do I keep this challenging and don't make it so easy? And I
Yeah.
think that's when it benefits us to take a step back and think about, well, the point of language education or any kind of education isn't to weed out the weak from the strong or to make things as
Yeah.
hard as possible. It's how do we learn to communicate effectively?
Yep.
So I think, coming at this with a mindset of how do we integrate it? How do we help prepare students for a world in which this exists, even when we don't entirely know the role it will take
Yeah.
moving forward,
Yep.
is maybe more helpful than worrying about the doomsday element of it.
Yep.
Though I certainly understand that as well. That's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, no, I like it. And this is certainly going to surface in our season this time around as well. We already have a few guests lined up where we will be segueing into some AI things and artificial.
Well, and I'm happy that some of the conversations that we already have in store for you have brought up AI rather than as a central point, as a cog in a larger machine of new learning tools and practices.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I'm excited to share those with our listeners.
Yeah. So that was something that we would rank on the more happy and positive side that happened this summer. However,
since I was the one who used the word doomsday, I guess I can bring up this article that I'm looking at right now about West Virginia University. And I'll just read this segment here. That West Virginia University is proposing eliminating 9% of the majors and 7% of the full-time faculty members at its flagship campus, including the entirety of the Department of World Languages, Literatures, and Linguistics. Language programs have certainly faced universal pushes towards cuts in my lifetime and before. But this is, for a university of this size, this is pretty extreme. So what's your reaction when you hear something like that?
Oh, it's devastating. And basically every association in the United States that is related to supporting language learning and teaching has come up with statements, condemning this crazy program elimination. There are petitions that we urge all of our listeners to sign, and we will make sure to have those links in our show notes.
Yes.
This is definitely something that we need to fight against. I think this shows us that we have more work to do, that our work in language advocacy just never stops. And I think we need to find new ways of how we can articulate, especially to administrators who may not readily see the value and the impact of what learning about a new language, learning about a different culture, what that really does for the learner. And I think if we can continue the good work that everybody in the field of world language education in this country is doing, if we can keep going, pushing ahead, and being more vocal and sharing more of our stories and compelling stories, and unfortunately probably also hard numbers, because that's what administrators oftentimes look at when they make decisions. But if we can rally the troops and just help fight program eliminations like this, hopefully we will be successful and actually grow language learning and teaching in the United States rather than cut programs.
That was very well said. Thank you. It makes me so sad whenever, again, this is in this field, that kind of advocacy is always part of the discussion. Right? They're always fighting for why this is valuable. But when it's up against such an extreme push, I think, again, the question we have to ask ourselves is how to communicate the value.
Yep, exactly.
How do you get past against a way of thinking that is so sort of boxed in about what value
Yep.
means
Yep.
and what is the context of those hard numbers. And that can be a tough fight when people aren't accustomed to looking more broadly at the context of what language and culture means and how it impacts the lives of everyone. That's a really broad way of me commenting on that, but just trying to tie it back to what we were just saying about artificial intelligence and how do you make sure you're prepared to exist in the world that's coming.
Well, and language classes cannot simply be replaced by having our students work with online apps for learning languages. Language is about communication.
Yeah.
You need ways to apply that, to talk to somebody else, to communicate via letter writing or whatever the means may be of communication. But simply telling students to fulfill like some kind of a language requirement by spending time on an app, that is certainly no replacement for what happens in the actual language curriculum.
No, and I think we're coming out of a time where we've all been made a little more aware of how dangerously and frighteningly isolating this world can be. And I think, it really is in everyone's best interest to maintain that interpersonal connection, because that's how that's how we make the world better.
Yep, absolutely. No, you're right, Sam. Can't agree more. Well, and of course, we don't want to end on a downer here.
Of course
not. I think something to celebrate that happened at the very tail end of last spring, but that we didn't have quite enough time to get into our previous season. At Cornell, every year, there is the Sophie Washburn French Instructorship, which recognizes excellence in language instruction among language lecturers in our college here. And we would like to celebrate and give a shout out to the 2 lecturers who received this honor this past spring, early summer for the year of 2022-2023. And the shout out goes to, drumroll please. Very nice, Sam, very nice. Our colleagues, Tess Savella in Asian Studies. Tess teaches Tagalog.
And one of our colleagues from Near Eastern Studies who teaches Modern Hebrew, among other things, Shalom Shur.
Hooray! Congratulations to both of you for your excellent work supporting language learning and teaching on our campus.
Yes, we so appreciate what you do for our students and for all of us. So coming up the rest of this fall semester, we have a number of very exciting guests and some really interesting topics like psycholinguistic approaches to instructed second language acquisition. We've got another conversation about corpora and data in the language classroom, language learners' participation in other cultures. We'll be talking about reverse design and its role in curricular and programmatic articulation. And on a perhaps less technical sounding note, you'll get to meet our newest LRC team member, Hillary Yarger, who is a delight. And we're very excited for you to get to know Hillary. And next week, we will speak with Dr. Americo Mendoza-Mori from Harvard, recapping his talk as part of our monthly LRC speaker series on language revitalization, cultural reclamation, and global indigeneity. Until then...
Whoa. Hold on, Sam. We're not quite ready yet.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I got carried away.
I know. You were on a roll here. No. We forgot our words.
Oh, yes. What's our prompt this season?
So, what's a word in a language you speak, love, are learning, want to learn that does not exist in English, but that you wish it did?
Ooh.
What is that word for you?
Okay, I thought of one for today. This is an Italian word because Italy was the first country I went to outside of the United States since the pandemic. So I thought I'd dig up some of my college Italian, which is nothing to write home about. But the word I chose was abbiocco, which the closest English term for it would be food coma.
Oh, nice.
But I think the food coma is more descriptive of something that happens to you as a consequence, whereas I think abioko is a little bit more a pleasant state that you are in after a large and satisfying meal. And I think it's got a little twist that's more evocative than the two-word term in English.
I like it. Now I want pizza and pasta.
So let it be. It is currently 8:57 a.m., but moving forward. It's never stopped me. How about you, Angelika? What's your word?
Well, of course, it needs to be a German word because the German language is great for words like that. My word is, yours is very loving, positive, something good. Of course, here I am, the grumpy German. My word is verschlimmbessern, which means to make something worse by trying to improve it.
Ah, you mean like trying to save money by cutting all your language programs?
Well, yeah, kind of like that. Yeah, you got that right.
Okay. Are there any other examples you might use?
Oh, there are so many. Absolutely. I mean, think about you have a bad haircut and you try to make it better by cutting it yourself and you just end up looking like a complete mess.
Fair
Not
enough.
that has happened ever in my life, but
No,
never. Well, here we are.
Here we are. Well, so much to look forward to. Thank you for tuning in for another fun and informal opening to our season. We'll be back next week with an expert to talk to. But until then,
Auf Wiederhören.
The Language Resource Center is located on the ground floor of Stimson Hall on Cornell's main campus in Ithaca, New York. Check us out on the web at lrc.cornell.edu.
Or follow Cornell LRC on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Speaking of Language is produced by Angelika Kramer and Sam Lupowitz.
Recorded by Sam Lupowitz.
Original music by Sam Lupowitz, Dan Gable, and Joe Gibson.
Thanks also to the College of Arts and Sciences at Cornell University.
As a reminder, the ideas and opinions expressed on this podcast do not reflect those of the College of Arts and Sciences or any other official entity of Cornell University.
We thank our listeners, and do stay tuned for our next episode.